When Kelly reached the dressing room, the wardrobe mistress said, "I have the evening gown ready for you." "You had better," Kelly was sobbing. "No, I can't go out there in front of those people. They'll laugh at me." She was becoming hysterical. "I'm through. I'm never going to go out there again." "Never?" "Of course you are." Kelly spun around. Mark was standing in the doorway. "Mark. What are you doing here?" "Oh, I've kind of been hanging around lately." You saw what happened out there?" Mark smiled. "It was wonderful. I'm glad it happened." Kelly was staring at him. What? He stepped close to her and took out a handkerchief to dry her tears. "Kelly, before you walked out there, the audience thought you were just a beautiful, untouchable dream, a fantasy, out of reach. When you tripped and fell, it showed them that you're human, and they adored you for it. Now you go back out there and make them happy." She looked into Mark's compassionate eyes, and that was the moment Kelly realized she was in love with him. The wardrobe woman was putting the evening gown back on a clothes rack. "Give me that," Kelly said. She looked at Mark and smiled through her tears. 5 minutes later, when Kelly confidently walked out on the runway, there was a wave of thunderous applause and a standing ovation from the audience. Kelly stood there facing them, overwhelmed by emotion. It was so wonderful to have Mark in her life again. She remembered how nervous she had been in the beginning. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly had been tense, waiting for Mark to make a pass at her, but he was always the perfect gentleman. His shyness made her feel more confident. It was Kelly who began most of the conversations, and no matter what the subject was, she found that Mark was knowledgeable and amusing. One evening, Kelly said, "Mark, there's a great symphony orchestra opening tomorrow night. Do you like classical music?" He nodded. "I grew up with it." "Good. We'll go." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The concert was brilliant, and the audience enthusiastic. On the way back to Kelly's apartment, Mark said, "Kelly, I lied to you. I should have known," Kelly thought. "He's just like the rest of them." "It's over." She steeled herself for his answer. "Did you?" "Yes. I don't really like classical music." Kelly bit her lip to keep from bursting out laughing. On their next date, Kelly said, "I want to thank you for Angel. She's great company." "And so are you," Kelly thought. Mark had the brightest blue eyes she had ever seen, and an endearing, crooked, little smile. She enjoyed his company tremendously and... Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The water was getting cold. Kelly turned off the shower, toweled herself off, put on the hotel's terry cloth robe, and went into the bedroom. "It's all yours." "Thanks." Diane got up and stepped into the bathroom. It looked like a storm had struck. Water had spilled onto the floor, and towels were strewn all over the floor. Angrily, Diane walked back into the bedroom. "The bathroom is a mess. Are you used to having people pick up after you?" Kelly smiled sweetly. "Yes, Mrs. Stevens. As a matter of fact, I grew up with a lot of maids taking care of me." "Well, I'm not one of them. You wouldn't qualify. Diane took a deep breath. I think it would be better if there's no we, Mrs. Stevens. There's you and there's me. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then, without another word, Diane turned and went back into the bathroom. 15 minutes later, when she emerged, Kelly was in bed. Diane reached for the switch to turn off the overhead light. No, don't touch that. It was a scream. Diane looked at Kelly, startled. What? Leave the lights on. Diane asked scornfully, are you afraid of the dark? Yes. I am afraid of the dark. Diane said patronizingly, why? Did your parents tell you scary bogeyman stories when you were a little girl? There was a long silence. That's it? Diane went to her own bed. She lay there for a minute, then closed her eyes. Richard, darling, I never believed that someone could die of a broken heart. I believe it now. I need you so much. I need you to guide me. I need your warmth and your love. You're here somewhere, I know you are. I can feel you. You're a gift that God loaned me, but not for long enough. Good night, my guardian angel. Please don't ever leave me. Please. In her bed, Kelly could hear Diane quietly sobbing. Kelly's lips tightened. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. And tears began to roll down her cheeks. Chapter 27. When Diane awakened in the morning, Kelly was sitting in a chair, facing a wall. Morning, Diane said. Did you get some sleep? There was no response. We have to figure out what our next move is. We can't stay here forever. No response. Exasperated, Diane said loudly, Kelly, can you hear me? Kelly spun around in her chair. Do you mind? I'm in the middle of a mantra. Oh, sorry. I didn't forget it. Kelly rose. Did anyone ever tell you you snore? Diane felt a small shock. She could hear Richard's voice saying, on the first night they had slept together, darling, did you know you snore? Let me put it another way. It's not really a snore. Your nose sings delicious little melodies through the night like the music of angels. And he had taken her in his arms and well, you do, Kelly said. She walked over to the television set and turned it on. Let's see what's happening in the world. She began to channel surf and suddenly stopped. A news show was on the air, and the host was Ben Roberts. It's Ben. Kelly exclaimed. Who's Ben? Diane asked indifferently. Ben Roberts. He does the news and interview shows. He's the only interviewer I really enjoy. He and Mark became great friends. One day she suddenly stopped. Ben Roberts was saying. And in a bulletin just in, Anthony Altieri, the purported mafia head who was recently acquitted in his murder trial, died this morning, of cancer. He was. Kelly turned to Diane. Did you hear that? Altieri's dead. Diane felt nothing. It was news from another world, another time. Diane looked at Kelly and said, I think it would be better if you and I split up. The two of us together. Are You Afraid of the Dark? 46, author, Sidney Sheldon. Who's Ben? Diane asked indifferently. Ben Roberts. He does the news and interview shows. He's the only interviewer I really enjoy. He and Mark became great friends. One day she suddenly stopped. Ben Roberts was saying. And in a bulletin just in, Anthony Altieri, the purported mafia head who was recently acquitted in his murder trial, died this morning, of cancer. He was. Kelly turned to Diane. Did you hear that? Altieri's dead. Diane felt nothing. It was news from another world, another time. Diane looked at Kelly and said, I think it would be better if you and I split up. The two of us together are too easy to spot. Right, Kelly said dryly. We're the same height. I meant I know what you meant. But I could put on white face, and Diane was looking at her, puzzled. What? Just kidding, Kelly said. Splitting up is a great idea. It's almost a plan, isn't it? Kelly, it's certainly been interesting knowing you, Mrs. Stevens. Diane said curtly. Let's check out of here. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The lobby was crowded with a convention of women checking in and half a dozen guests checking out. Kelly and Diane waited in line. Out on the street, looking into the lobby, Harry Flint saw them and moved out of sight. He picked up his cellular phone. They just came down to the lobby. Good. Did Carballo get there, Mr. Flint? Yes. Do exactly as I told you. Cover the entrance to the hotel from both corners, so that no matter which way they go, they're trapped. I want them to disappear without a trace. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Kelly and Diane had finally reached the cashier's desk. The cashier smiled. I hope you've had a pleasant stay here. Very pleasant, thank you, Diane said. We're still alive. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. As they walked to the lobby door, Kelly asked, Do you know where you're going now, Mrs. Stevens? No, I just want to get away from Manhattan. What about you? I just want to get away from you. Back to Paris. The two of them stepped outside and carefully looked around. There was the usual pedestrian traffic and everything seemed normal. Goodbye, Mrs. Stevens, Kelly said, a note of relief in her voice. Goodbye, Kelly. Kelly turned to the left and started walking toward the corner. Diane looked after her a moment, then turned to the right and began walking in the other direction. They had taken no more than half a dozen steps when Harry Flint and Vince Carballo suddenly appeared at opposite ends of the block. The expression on Carballo's face was vicious. Flint's lips were turned up in a half-smile. The two men began closing in on the women, pushing their way through the pedestrians. Diane and Kelly turned to look at each other, panicky. They had been ambushed. They both hurried back toward the entrance of the hotel, but the doorway was so crowded that there was no way for them to get back inside. There was nowhere to go. The two men were getting closer. Kelly turned to Diane, and as she watched, stunned, Diane smiled, and waved cheerily at Flint and then at Carballo. Have you gone crazy? Kelly whispered. Diane, still smiling, took out her cell phone and spoke into it rapidly. We're in front of the hotel now. Oh, good. You're around the corner. She grinned and gave a victory sign to Kelly. They'll be here in a minute, she said loudly. She looked at Flint and Carballo and said into the phone, "No, there are only two of them." Diane listened and then laughed. "Right, they're here? Okay." As Kelly and the two men looked on, Diane stepped off the curb into the street, scanning the oncoming cars. Diane started signaling to an approaching car in the distance and excitedly waved it over. Flint and Carballo had stopped, puzzled by what was happening. Diane pointed to the two men. "Over here," she shouted into the oncoming traffic, waving wildly. "Over here." Flint and Carballo looked at each other and made a quick decision. They turned back to where they had come from and disappeared around the corners. Kelly was staring at Diane, her heart pounding wildly. "They're gone," she said. Who were you talking to?" Diane took a deep breath to steady herself. "Nobody. My battery is dead." Chapter 28. Kelly was staring at Diane, dumbfounded. "That was great. I wish I had thought of that." Diane said dryly, "You will. What are you going to do now?" "Get out of Manhattan." "How?" Kelly asked. "They're going to be watching all the train stations, airports, bus stations, car rental." Diane thought for a moment. "We can go to Brooklyn. They won't be looking there." "Fine," Kelly said. "Go ahead." "What?" "I'm not going with you." Diane started to say something and then changed her mind. "Are you sure?" "Yes, Mrs. Stevens." Diane said, "Well, then, goodbye." "Goodbye." Kelly watched as Diane hailed a taxi and started to enter it. Kelly stood there, hesitant, trying to make a decision. She was standing alone on an unfamiliar street, with nowhere to go, and no one to go to. The taxi door closed, and the cab started to move. "Wait!" Kelly shouted. The taxi stopped. Kelly hurried up to it. Diane opened the door, and Kelly stepped in and settled back in her seat. "What made you change your mind?" "I just realized I've never seen Brooklyn." Diane looked at Kelly a moment and shook her head. The driver asked, "Where to?" "Take us to Brooklyn, please," Diane said. The taxi started. "Any place special?" "Just drive around." Kelly looked at Diane incredulously. "You don't know where we're going." "I'll know when we get there." Why did I come back? Kelly was asking herself. During the ride, the two of them sat silent, side by side. In 20 minutes, they were crossing the Brooklyn Bridge. "We're looking for a hotel," Diane told the driver. "I'm not sure which you want. A nice hotel, lady." "I know just the one. It's called the Adams. You'll like it. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The Adams Hotel was a 5-story brick building with a canopy in front and a doorman in attendance. When the taxi pulled up at the curb, the driver asked, "Does this look okay?" Diane said, "This looks fine." Kelly said nothing. They got out of the taxi, and the doorman greeted them. "Good day, ladies. Are you checking in?" Diane nodded. "Yes. Do you have luggage?" Diane said glibly, "The airline lost our bags. Is there any place around here where we can shop and pick up some clothes?" "There's a very nice ladies' shop at the end of the block. Perhaps you would like to check in here first. Then we can have your things sent directly to your room." "Fine. Are you sure they'll have a room for us here? This time of the year, there's no problem. Asterisk asterisk asterisk." The clerk behind the hotel desk proffered registration forms. As Kelly signed hers, she said aloud, "Emily Bronte." Diane glanced at the clerk to see if there was any recognition on his face. Nothing. Diane wrote, "Mary Cassatt." The clerk took their registration cards. "And do you wish to pay by credit card?" "Yes, we know," Diane interrupted quickly. Kelly looked at her and reluctantly nodded. "Luggage. It's coming. We'll be back. You'll have suite 515. The clerk watched them walk out the door. Two real beauties. And alone. What a waste. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The for Madame shop was a cornucopia. There were women's clothes of every description, and a leather section with handbags and suitcases. Kelly looked around and said, "It looks like we've lucked out." A saleslady walked up to them. "May I help you?" "We're just browsing," Diane told her. The saleslady watched as they started walking through the store. "Look," said Kelly. "Stockings." She grabbed half a dozen pairs. Diane followed suit. Pantyhose. Bras, blips. Soon their arms were laden with lingerie. The saleslady hurried over. "Let me help you." "Thank you." The saleswoman relieved them of their burdens. Diane and Kelly began to move down the aisles. Kelly was examining a rack of slacks. She selected 4 pairs and turned to Diane. "No telling when we're going to be able to shop again." Diane picked out some slacks and a striped summer dress. "You can't wear that," Kelly said. "Stripes will make you look fat." Diane started to put it back, then looked at Kelly and handed the dress to the saleslady. "I'll take this." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The saleswoman watched in amazement as Kelly and Diane went through the rest of the racks. By the time they had finished, their selections filled 4 suitcases. Kelly looked at them and grinned. "That should hold us for a while." When they went to the cashier, she asked, "Will that be cash or credit card?" "Credit cash," Diane said. Kelly and Diane opened their purses and divided the bill. They both had the same thought, cash is running low. Kelly said to the cashier, "We're staying at the Adams. I wonder if you could have your things delivered?" "Certainly." "Your names?" Kelly hesitated a moment. "Charlotte Bronte." Diane looked at her and said quickly, "Emily." "Emily Bronte." Kelly remembered. "Right." The cashier was watching them, a confused expression on her face. She turned to Diane. "And your name?" Diane's mind was spinning. What name had she signed? Georgia O'Keeffe. Frida. Kahlo, Joan Mitchell? Her name is Mary Cassatt, Kelly said. The cashier swallowed. Of course. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Next to the For Madam shop was a drugstore. We're in luck again. Diane smiled. They hurried inside and began a second shopping spree. Mascara. Blush. Toothbrushes. Toothpaste. Tampons and panty liners. Lipstick. Hair clips. Powder. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. By the time Diane and Kelly arrived back at their hotel, the 4 suitcases had already been delivered to their room. Kelly stared at them. "I wonder which are yours and which are mine." "It doesn't matter," Diane assured her. "We're going to be here for maybe a week or more, so we might as well just put everything away." "I suppose so." They began busily hanging up dresses and slacks, putting their lingerie in drawers, and placing their toilet articles in the bathroom. When the suitcases were emptied and everything had been put in place, Diane took off her shoes and dress and gratefully sank down on one of the beds. "This feels wonderful," she sighed contentedly. "I don't know about you, but I'm having dinner in bed. Then I'm going to take a nice, long, hot bath. I'm not moving from here." A pleasant-faced, uniformed maid knocked and came into the suite, carrying an armful of fresh towels. 2 minutes later, she emerged from the bathroom. "If there's anything you need, please ring for me. Have a good evening." "Thank you." Kelly watched her leave. Diane was browsing through a house magazine she had picked up at her bedside. "Do you know what year this hotel was built?" "Get dressed," Kelly said. "We're leaving." "It was built in Get Dressed." "We're getting out of here." Diane looked up at her. "Is this some kind of joke?" "No. Something terrible is going to happen." There was panic in her voice. Diane sat up, alarmed. "What's going to happen?" "I don't know. But we have to get out of here, or we're both going to die." Her fear was contagious, but it made no sense. "Kelly, you're not being reasonable." "If I'm begging you, Diane." Thinking about it later, Diane never knew whether she gave in because of the urgency in Kelly's voice or because it was the first time Kelly had called her Diane. "All right." Diane got up. "We'll pack our clothes and no. Leave everything." Diane looked at Kelly in disbelief. "Leave everything? We just bought hurry. Now." "All right." As Diane was reluctantly dressing, she thought, "I hope she knows what she's doing. If quick." It was a strangled scream. Diane hurriedly finished dressing. "Faster." They grabbed their purses and hurried out the door. "I must be as crazy as she is," Diane thought resentfully. When they reached the lobby, Diane found herself running to keep up with Kelly. "Would you mind telling me where we're going?" Outside, Kelly looked around. "There's a park across the street from the hotel." I need to sit down." Exasperated, Diane followed Kelly into the park. They took seats on a bench. Diane said, "What are we doing?" At that instant, there was a tremendous explosion inside the hotel, and from where they sat, Diane and Kelly could see windows being blown out of the room they had been occupying, with debris flying through the air. In stunned disbelief, Diane watched what was happening. That was a bomb. Terror crept into her voice. "In our room." She turned to Kelly. How did you know?" "The maid." Diane looked at her, puzzled. "What about her?" Kelly said quietly, "Hotel maids don't wear $400 Manolo Blahnik shoes." Diane was finding it difficult to breathe. How could they have found us?" "I don't know," Kelly said. "But remember who we're dealing with." They both sat there, filled with dread. "Did Tanner Kingsley give you anything when you were in his office?" Diane asked. Kelly shook her head. "No." "Did he give you anything?" "No." They realized it at the same instant. "His card." They opened their purses and took out the business cards Tanner Kingsley had given them. Diane tried to break hers in half. It would not bend. "There's some kind of chip inside," she said, furious. Kelly tried to bend her card. "In mine, too. That's how the bastards have been tracking us." Diane took Kelly's card and said angrily, "Not anymore." Kelly watched as Diane stepped out onto the road and threw the cards down on the street. Within minutes, they had been run over by a dozen cars and trucks. In the distance, the sounds of approaching sirens were filling the air. Kelly stood up. "We'd better get away from here, Diane. Now that they can't track us anymore, we'll be all right." "I'm going back to Paris." "What will you do?" "Try to figure out why this is happening." "Be careful." "You, too." Diane hesitated a moment. "Kelly, thanks. You saved my life." Embarrassed, Kelly said, "I feel bad about something." "I lied to you." "You did. You know what I said about your painting?" "Yes. I really liked it a lot." "You're good." Diane smiled. "Thanks. I'm afraid I've been pretty rude to you." "Diane." "Yes. I never grew up with maids." Diane laughed, and the two of them embraced. "I'm glad we met," Diane said warmly. "So am I." They stood there, looking at each other, finding it difficult to say goodbye. "I have an idea," Diane said. "If you need me, here's my cell phone number." She wrote it on a piece of paper. "Here's mine," Kelly replied, and gave it to Diane. "Well, goodbye again." Diane said haltingly, "Yeah. Goodbye, Kelly." Diane watched Kelly walk away. At the corner, she turned and waved. Diane waved back. As Kelly disappeared, Diane looked up at the blackened hole that was to have been their tomb, and she felt a chill. Chapter 29. Kathy Ordonez walked into Tanner Kingsley's office with the morning newspapers and said, "It's happening again." She handed him the newspapers. They all had banner headlines. Fog disrupts major German cities. All Swiss airports closed by fog. Death toll rises from fog in Rome. Kathy said, "Shall I send these to Senator Van Leuven?" "Yes." "Right away," Tanner said grimly. Kathy hurried out of his office. Tanner looked at his wristwatch and smiled. The bomb must have gone off by now. The two bitches have finally been disposed of. His secretary's voice came over the intercom. "Mr. Kingsley, Senator Van Leuven is on the line for you. Do you wish to take it?" "Yes." Tanner picked up the phone. Tanner Kingsley. "Hello, Mr. Kingsley. This is Senator Van Leuven." "Good afternoon, Senator. My assistants and I happen to be near your headquarters, and I wondered if it would be convenient for you if we dropped in for a visit." "Absolutely," Tanner said enthusiastically. "I would be very happy to show you around, Senator." "Fine. We'll be there shortly." Tanner pressed the intercom button. "I'm expecting some visitors in a few minutes. Hold all my calls." He thought about the obituary he had seen in the newspapers a few weeks earlier.